Hello, my name is Bill Minner.
I'm Donna Albus. Welcome to the historic Swenson home, built in 1909 by William and Shirley Swenson. Well, let's back up a generation and begin with William's father, Svante Johann Swenson. He was born in Sweden in 1848. Svante J. became an engineer educated at the Royal University of Sweden. At the invitation of his uncle, Svante Magnus Swenson, he immigrated to the United States in 1869.
Svante was initially employed at the S&M Swenson and Sons Bank at 52 Wall Street, New York City. Due to his chronic health issues, Svante moved south to his uncle's family-owned sugar plantation in St. Mary's Parish, Louisiana, where he worked as a plantation manager. It was there in Louisiana where he and his wife Lizzie Chapman Brown Swenson had their first and ultimately only child, whom they named William Gray on December 8, 1879. Again, due to health conditions, Svante moved his family to Texas, initially settling in Austin, where he worked in the banking industry. While running the store, Swenson continued to buy land from newspaper ads announcing that he would pay top dollar for headright certificates, which were given to the people by authority of the Republic of Texas. He procured ranch land for his uncle, Svante Magnus Swenson, in several West Texas counties, including Throckmorton, Jones, and Haskell, ultimately building an empire of around 500 sections, which were divided among 6 different ranches. It was William's mother, Mrs. S.J. Swenson, who named all of these ranches: Mount Albin, Noraland, Ellerslie, and the like. Svante again moved his family to one of the ranches just a mile north of Anson, where he was ranch manager.
In 1883, his continued failing health eventually forced the family to once again move to a place where he was closer to medical care at the Alexander Sanitarium in Abilene, Texas. Abilene was a newly incorporated town in March of 1881. William Gray was about 4 years of age when his family moved to Abilene. He was barely 1 year older than the city. Svante bought Section 34, Blind to Salem Land Survey, and built the family home there. Mrs. Swenson named the ranch Ridgeland. The main campus of Abilene Christian College was later located in that Ridgeland big pasture. Unfortunately, Svante passed away the following year due to his illness. William Gray's mother and extended family in and around Abilene and Anson area raised him. He attended public and private schools, graduated from Abilene High in 1897 as valedictorian.
William completed his education at Southwestern University in Georgetown. At Southwestern, he earned the highest grade average on record while studying engineering and Greek. He collaborated with Professor Robert Heyer in building a wireless telegraph 2 years before the Italian inventor Marconi announced his discovery. While he was at the university, William lost his mother in June 1898. Southwestern offered William a chance to meet his future wife, Shirley McCollum. On his 21st birthday, he went to New York to receive his estate, valued around $40,000. He graduated from college, and on February 1st, 1902, he married Ms. McCollum, a native of Virginia. The couple's first home was one which William had drawn the plans and specs for and built at the southwest corner of North 2nd and Mulberry. This was the family home until 1910, when the family moved into this rambling 2-story home they built in the 1700 block of the street which bears their name. Professor Heyer had gone from Southwestern to found a new institution, Southern Methodist University. It was because of his generous gift to that institution that Mr. Swenson became one of the few in an honor group known as the SMU Founders.
Upon his return to Abilene from college, Mr. Swenson wasted no time in finding ways to make life better for the residents of this small but bustling town. His first endeavors were to build a new bank, Citizens National Abilene, which he built along with other businessmen. The bank opened for business November the 2nd of 1902 on North First and Pine. This building was the first commercial building which he helped to build. At the bank's opening, Mr. Wagstaff was president, and Mr. Swenson was the first teller and active manager. He would eventually become director, a position which he held for his entire life.
Banking was only one of the many interests that Mr. Swenson involved himself in. Another of his early enterprises was that of electricity. Electrical power in Abilene at the time was still quite limited. It was restricted to direct current and available generally from dusk until midnight. Electricity was available in Abilene as early as 1891 with the Abilene Electric Light Company operations. The privately owned company floundered in 1905, then merged with Lytle Water to become Abilene Light and Water Company. A group of local businessmen, including Swenson, organized the utility companies. Swenson became chief of operations for the newly formed company. He assumed control and made many improvements, including providing power continuously rather than only in the evenings. On November 5th, 1919, plans were announced to erect a large power plant in Abilene. This announcement made front page news. The plant was built from 1920 through 1922 and was one of the most modern in the United States. Its 182-foot smokestack was reported to be the highest object in West Texas. West Texas Utilities was organized in 1923. Not only did this plant generate electricity for Abilene residents, but it also provided power to towns from Merkel to Chico. The Abilene Company eventually supplied electricity to north of Childress, Alpine to the west, and Presidio to the south. West Texas utility linemen spent months and years extending the power lines for electricity north, south, and west over the rugged West Texas terrain. With the lack of modern equipment, it took an excessive amount of manpower to dig the holes for the poles because it was all done by hand. WTU camps with their sleeping and kitchen facilities moved along with the progress of the electric line. The company and plant prospered until the late 1930s when the Great Depression created severe financial hardship, but it continued to service the big country.
Along with electricity came ice. The Abilene Ice Company was procured at the time of the bank failure in 1905. It was located at 3rd and Hickory. Mr. Swenson built the Abilene Ice Company and grew the ice business for 30 years. He became chief of operations. He constructed plants in many neighboring communities. It was as late as 1965 he finally sold his last interest in the ice business. In 1907, Swenson, Wagstaff, and Paramore started the street railway trolley to encourage the sale of land holdings in the area. Mr. Swenson was the organizer and president of the Abilene Street Railway Company, a streetcar service that made its first run in 1908. The Trolley Barn is still standing at North 12th and Merchant. It operated on and off between 1908 and 1923. The trolley's maiden voyage provides a bit of fun Abilene trivia. The first run was set on a Sunday, so there would be fewer horses on the streets because the new trolley vehicles frightened them. Community leaders wearing their Sunday best crowded onto the trolley, and the company president, Mr. Swenson, served as the honorary motorman. The townspeople lined the tracks to watch the amazing spectacle. The car made its first trip of 6 miles from the car barn to Simmons College to South 7th Street uneventfully. And when it got to the end of the line, the brakes failed. The car jumped the tracks, hit a pole, a barbed wire fence, and landed in a muddy ditch. None of the distinguished passengers were hurt, but they were definitely dirtier than when they had started.
Another of Mr. Swenson's business partners was Colonel Morgan Jones. He worked hard to build and improve several railroads in and around Abilene. He was part of and eventually the director of the Abilene and Northern Railroad. In this position, he did much of the legwork for procuring the right-of-way for the rail line. He was additionally involved with the building of the Roscoe, Snyder, and Pacific Railway, where he remained a director for the rest of his life. Mr. Swenson was involved in the financing, planning, and building of a multitude of downtown buildings, many of which still stand as major structures in the heart of the city. Mr. Swenson was one of the leaders in and a forerunner of the Abilene Chamber of Commerce. He was president of the chamber in 1923. He belonged to the 25,000 Club that brought Camp Barkley to Abilene. He was one of early Abilene's most important land developers. First was the Citizens National Bank in 1905. Notable among the real estate projects on which he collaborated were the 8-story Mims building at 3rd and Cypress, built in 1926, and the Hilton Hotel, now the Windsor, at 4th and Pine in 1927. While the hotel was locally owned, it was the second hotel to bear the name Conrad Hilton. Swenson was a member of the Abilene Hotel Company from 1927 to 1947. His civic district contributions included 8 years of service on the Abilene School Board. He also served for a time as president of the Abilene Improvement Company. He was a charter member and major financial contributor to the St. Paul Methodist Church.
The Swenson Garage housed the first car in Abilene, a 1903 Thomas Flyer named Daisy, purchased from John Guitar Sr., the first Abilenian to own a car. After about 6 weeks as a motorist, Guitar decided this mode of transportation was not for him because it just went too fast, 15 miles per hour. Swenson's second car was purchased and sent in a crate that was delivered by train. He assembled the car on the train station dock. It was 1915 when the Yellowstone National Park opened to cars. The Swensons, along with several Abilene families, loaded up their cars with kids, tents, tools, and food, and a healthy dose of courage. They were off on the trails of Wyoming. William and Shirley had 3 small children when they moved into this house. In 1904, Earl Gray was born. Margaret Evelyn was born in 1907. Then, while on a family visit to Virginia, William Gray Jr. was born in 1908. A 4th child, a little girl named Dorothy, was born in 1916. The picture on the front porch is Mrs. Swenson's daughter, Evelyn, and her granddaughter, Shug. Many family events were celebrated in the Swenson house.
In 1952, the Swensons celebrated their 50th wedding anniversary at this home with their family that had grown to be a large group. Earl Gray Swenson, Evelyn Fields with daughter Sugar, William Gray Swenson Jr. with daughters Sue and Sherry, and youngest daughter Dorothy and Gerald Crow with daughters Jerry and Carolyn. W.G. Swenson, Dada, and Shirley, Memaw Swenson in the center of the picture. The Swenson House Historical Society will forever be grateful to Sue and David Stubbeman for their generosity in helping to keep the Swenson House a well-maintained historic home and the gem of Abilene.
We can see that Mr. Swenson was a man of vision who could see where a product of service was needed and then find a way to fulfill that need. There are many other enterprises of which he either initiated or collaborated with others to accomplish: land development, downtown trolley system, commercial buildings, etc. While most of his noble achievements were done in the time period from his return to Abilene in 1902 through the late 20s, he remained active as a board member, director, trustee, and a building manager throughout the remainder of his life. An interview with the Abilene Reporter News in 1965 revealed that at the age of 86, he was still active in many fields, including director of the Citizens National Bank, where he had his office. He died in Abilene on August 29, 1969. Now that you've heard the backstory, I hope that you enjoy your tour of the house.